let's go ahead and continue in our book, Wayside School. Yay. All right, so we're starting out on chapter 12, Jason. Jason had a small face and a big mouth. He had the second biggest mouth in Mrs. Jewell's class, and there were an awful lot of big mouths in that class. Mrs. Jewell, Jason called without raising his hand, Joy is chewing gum in class. Joy had the biggest mouth in Mrs. Jewell's class, and it was filled with gum. There was hardly even room for her tongue. Joy, I'm ashamed of you, said Mrs. Jewell. I'm afraid I'll have to put your name on the board. That's okay, Mrs. Jewell, Jason called. I'll do it. Jason hopped out of his seat and wrote Joy's name on the blackboard under the word discipline. While he was up, Joy got the glob of gum out of her mouth and placed it on Jason's chair. Rondi and Allison giggled. Jason walked back from the blackboard to his desk and sat down. Mrs. Jewels, he called, I'm stuck. Rondi and Allison giggled again. Mrs. Jewels got angry. Joy, you're going home on the kindergarten bus today. Oh, good, said Todd. I'll have some company. Todd went home on the kindergarten bus every day. He could never seem to make it to 12 o'clock without getting into trouble 3 times. His name wasn't even up on the blackboard yet, but he knew that by 12 o'clock it would be up, checked, and circled. Mrs. Jewels, what am I going to do? I'm stuck. I'm going to have to stay here the rest of my life, said Jason. Joy, tell Jason you're sorry, said Mrs. Jewels. I'm sorry, Jason, said Joy. Oh, that's okay, Joy, said Jason. I don't mind. Try to get up, Jason, said Mrs. Jewels. Jason tried. I can't, Mrs. Jewels. I'm stuck. Mrs. Jewels asked the 3 Erics to help. Eric Fry and Eric Ovens pulled Jason. Eric Bacon held the chair. Stop, cried Jason. You'll rip my pants. Ronnie and Allison giggled. All right, said Mrs. Jewels. Let's try ice water. That should freeze the gum and make it less sticky. I'll go get some for Miss Mush. Miss Mush was the lunch teacher at Wayside School. She had the remarkable ability to undercook a dish and overcook it at the same time. Her specialty was a nice hot bowl of mud. She called it porridge. Jason looked at Rondi and Allison. No, Mrs. Jewels, he said. Don't leave me. Besides, Miss Mush's ice water is probably warm. Don't be silly, Jason, said Mrs. Jewels. I'm sure it will be at least as cold as her soups. Rondi and Allison leered at Jason. No, Mrs. Jewels, don't go, begged Jason. I'll be right back, Jason, said Mrs. Jewels. She went to Miss Mush for some ice water. As soon as Mrs. Jewels stepped out the door, Rondi and Allison jumped up from their seats and started to tickle Jason. He laughed until his hair turned purple. The girls got back to their seats just as Mrs. Jewels returned. Mrs. Jewels carried a big bucket of ice-cold water. Oh, no, please don't, no, said Jason pleaded. We have no choice, said Mrs. Jewels. She threw the water all over him. Well, said Mrs. Jewels, try to get up. Jason was drenched. I'm wet, and I'm cold, and I'm still stuck. Oh, well, it didn't work, said Mrs. Jewels. At least we tried. Now I guess we'll have to cut your pants off. Rondi and Allison giggled. No, Mrs. Jewels, no, Jason screamed. I don't mind being stuck here. I'm really very comfortable. Don't be silly, Jason, said Mrs. Jewels. Don't cut off my pants, said Jason. The 3 Erics can carry you to the bathroom, said Mrs. Jewels. I'll ask Louie to call your mother. She can bring you a new pair of pants. The 3 Erics took hold of Jason's chair and turned him upside down. No, Mrs. Jewels, said Jason. Now I'll always have a place to sit down. I won't have to worry about finding a seat on the bus. The 3 Erics began to take him away. Wait, said Joy. Mrs. Jewels, if I can get Jason unstuck, do I still have to go home on the kindergarten bus? All right, said Mrs. Jewels. If you can somehow get Jason free, you don't have to go home early. Don't trust her, Mrs. Jewels, said Jason. He was still hanging upside down. I'll just kiss him, said Joy. No, Jason screamed. Don't let her kiss me, Mrs. Jewels. Throw water on me, tickle me, cut off my pants, hang me upside down from the ceiling, but don't let her kiss me. I'll just kiss him on the nose, said Joy. We've got nothing to lose, Jason, said Mrs. Jewels. Oh, who would want to kiss Jason, said Allison. Jason hung helplessly upside down. Joy stepped up and kissed him on the nose. Jason fell out of the chair and hit his head on the floor. Ronnie and Allison giggled. Darn, said Todd. Now I'll have to go home alone again. Joy erased her name from the blackboard. Okay, chapter 13, Rondi. So we were just talking about Allison and Rondi. Rondi had 22 beautiful teeth. Everyone else had 24. Rondi was missing her 2 front teeth, and those were the most beautiful teeth of all. Your front teeth are so cute, said Mrs. Jules. They make you look just adorable. But Mrs. Jules, said Rondi, I don't have any front teeth. I know, said Mrs. Jules. That's what makes them so cute. Rondi didn't understand. Oh, Rondi, I just love your 2 front teeth, said Mauricia. I wish I had some like that. But I don't have them, said Rondi. That's why I love them so much, said Mauricia. Oh, this is silly, said Rondi. Everybody thinks the teeth I don't have are cute. I'm not wearing a coat. Don't you all just love my coat? And what about my 3rd arm? I don't have one. Isn't it lovely? Love your hat, Rondi, said Joy. I'm not wearing a hat, Rondi screamed. That's what makes it so interesting, said Joy. Don't you think so, Leslie? Oh, yes, said Leslie. It's a very nice hat. Nice boots, too. I'm not wearing boots, Rondi insisted. Yes, said Joy. Very nice boots. They go so well with your hat. What hat? Asked Rondi. Yes, Leslie agreed. Rondi showed excellent taste by not wearing the hat or the boots. They go so well together. Rondi had had enough. She covered her head so nobody could see her hat. She put her feet under her desk so nobody could see her boots. Then she closed her mouth tightly so nobody could see her 2 front teeth. Suddenly, everybody who was sitting near her began to laugh. What's so funny? Asked Todd. The joke Rondi didn't tell, said Jason. Ask Rondi not to tell it again, Todd, said Calvin. Rondi, said Todd, don't tell it again? Rondi was horrified. She didn't know what to do. She kept her mouth shut and just stared at Todd. To her amazement, Todd laughed. Hey, everybody, called Todd. Listen to Rondi's joke. Rondi didn't say a word, but the rest of the class began to laugh. Mrs. Jules got very angry. She wrote Rondi's name on the blackboard under the word discipline. The classroom is not the place for jokes, she said. But, Mrs. Jules, said Rondi, I didn't tell a joke. Yes, I know, said Mrs. Jules, but the funniest jokes are the ones that remain untold. Okay, said Rondi. If that's what you want, then that's what you'll get. I'll really tell a joke. That way I won't disturb the class, and tomorrow I'll wear boots and a hat. Of course you won't like them as much as the ones I didn't wear today, but I better hurry up and tell my joke before you all start to laugh. There was a monkey sitting in a banana tree. He was very hungry. He knew that somewhere in the tree there was a magic banana, and that once he ate that banana, he wouldn't be hungry anymore. He ate 1 banana. That wasn't it. He was still hungry. He ate another banana. That one wasn't it either. He was still hungry. Finally, after he ate his 10th banana, he wasn't hungry anymore. I knew I'd find it, he said. It's too bad I didn't eat that one first. I wouldn't have had to waste all those other bananas. Nobody laughed. Nobody had even listened to Rondi. Mrs. Jules was busy teaching arithmetic, and everybody else was paying strict attention. Rondi slapped herself in the face to make sure she was really there. She was. The bell rang for recess. Rondi ran outside. She was very upset. Louis, the yard teacher, saw her. Why the frown, Rondi? He asked. Come on, smile. Let me see your cute front teeth. Rondi screamed. She socked Louis in the stomach, then bit his arm with her missing teeth, and that kind of bite hurts the worst. Okay, chapter 14, Sammy. It was a horrible, stinky, rainy day. Some rainy days are fun and exciting, but not this one. This one stunk. All the children were wet and wore smelly raincoats. The whole room smelled awful. Oh, it stinks in here, said Mauricia. Everybody laughed, but she was right. There was one good thing, however. There was a new boy in class. New kids are always fun, except no one could tell what the boy looked like. He was completely covered by his raincoat. Class, said Mrs. Jules, I'd like you all to meet Sammy. Let us show him what a nice class we can be. Leslie walked up and smiled at Sammy, but her smile quickly turned into a frown. You smell terrible, she said. Leslie, exclaimed Mrs. Jules, that's no way to greet a new member of our class. Mrs. Jules wrote Leslie's name on the blackboard under the word discipline. But he does, Mrs. Jules, said Leslie. He smells awful. You're ugly, Sammy replied. Now, Sammy, that's no way to talk, said Mrs. Jules. Leslie's a very pretty girl. She's ugly, said Sammy. Allison spoke up. Well, you might smell terrible and all are probably... Allison stood up. Well, you smell terrible and are probably even uglier, but nobody can see you because you are hiding under that smelly old raincoat. That will be enough of that, said Mrs. Jules. Now, Sammy, why don't you take off your coat and hang it in the closet? Let us all see how nice you look. I don't want to, you old windbag, said Sammy. That's because he's so ugly, said Leslie. I'm sure he's quite handsome, said Mrs. Jules. He's just shy. Here, let me help you. Mrs. Jules took off Sammy's coat for him, but underneath it was still another raincoat, even dirtier and smellier than the first one. They still couldn't see his face. Ooh, now he smells even worse, said Maurizia. You don't exactly smell like a rose either, Sammy replied. Mrs. Jules took off his second raincoat, but there was still another one under that, and the smell became so bad that Mrs. Jules had to run and stick her head out the window to get some fresh air. You're all a bunch of pigs, Sammy screeched. Dirty, rotten pigs. The smell was overpowering. Sammy just stood there hidden under his raincoats. Mrs. Jules wrote Sammy's name under the word discipline. Send him home on the kindergarten bus, said Joy. Not with me, said Todd. Mrs. Jules held her nose, walked up to Sammy, and removed his raincoat. She threw it out the window, but he had on still another one. Sammy hissed. Hey, old windbag, watch where you throw my good clothes. Mrs. Jules put a check next to Sammy's name on the blackboard. Then she took off another raincoat and threw it out the window. The smell got worse, for he had on still another one. Sammy began to laugh. His horrible laugh was even worse than his horrible voice. When Sammy first came into the room, he was 4 feet tall, but after Mrs. Jules removed 6 of his raincoats, he was only 3 feet tall, and there were still more raincoats to go. Mrs. Jules circled his name and removed another coat. She threw it out the window. Then she put a triangle around the circle and threw another one of his coats outside. She kept doing this until Sammy was only 1.5 feet tall. Or was 1.5 feet high. With every coat she took off, Sammy's laugh got louder and the smell got worse. Some of the children held their ears. Others could hold only one ear because they were holding their noses with the other hand. It was hard to say which was worse, the laugh or the smell. Sammy stopped laughing and said, Hey, old windbag, if you take off one more of my coats and throw it out the window, I'll bite your head off. They smell too bad for me to allow them in my classroom, said Mrs. Jules. You can pick them up when you leave. They smell better than you do, pighead, Sammy shouted. Mrs. Jules didn't stop. She took off another one of his coats, then another and another. Sammy was only 4 inches tall, 3 inches tall, 2 inches tall. At last, she removed the final coat. All that was there was a dead rat. Well, I don't allow dead rats in my classroom, said Mrs. Jules. She picked it up by the tail and put it in a plastic bag and threw it away. Mrs. Jules didn't allow dead cats in her classroom. Todd once brought in a dead rat for show and tell, and Mrs. Jules made him throw that one away. I'm glad Sammy isn't allowed in our classroom, said Rondi. I didn't like him very much. Yes, said Mrs. Jules. We caught another one. Dead rats were always trying to sneak into Mrs. Jules' class. That was the 3rd one she'd caught since September. Got a little tongue-tied trying to read quietly. All right, so we're going to stop there. We'll pick up on Dee Dee on Monday. All right, I hope you guys are enjoying it. Listening to a book. Okay. There we go. There we are. All right, thank you guys. Enjoy our story.